Welcome to the Wolfram Language in Section 8 of Fast Introduction for Programmers. This section is about patterns, which are used in several ways in the Wolfram language, and in particular will be used in the next section in defining functions. Patterns are expressions that stand for classes of expressions. For example, the basic pattern construct blank, entered as an underscore character, stands for any expression. So this pattern stands for any expression with a head of f and with one argument, where that argument can be anything. This input uses the cases function to select from a list all of the list elements that match f with one argument. One common use of patterns is in replacement rules to make replacements for things that match a pattern. Replacement rules are entered like this by entering the left side of the rule, and then a dash, and then a greater than character to get an arrow, and then the right side of the rule. This is a rule for replacing matching expressions by the number 5. This input uses that rule in the replace function to make a replacement. It's often useful to give names to patterns. For example, here is a rule with an x before the blank. The x gives a name to the expression that matches that pattern so that the matching expression can be used on the right side of the rule. This shows an application of that rule. There are other ways of applying rules. One way uses a function called replaceAll that makes replacements for all of the pieces of an expression that match the pattern. For example, this uses the replaceAll function to make replacements for all of the elements of a list that match the pattern f of x blank. The replaceAll function can also be entered using /dot, so the expression and then /dot and then the rule is just a different notation for the replaceAll function. There are many other pattern constructs besides the blank pattern. One example is the double blank pattern, which matches any sequence of one or more arguments. This shows that pattern used in the cases function to pick out list elements that have head f and one or more arguments. Another pattern construct is a pattern that matches a set of alternatives, which can be entered using a vertical bar character between the alternatives. For example, this pattern matches either a 1 or a 5. Here is that pattern used in the cases function to pick out elements with head f and with an argument that is either a 1 or a 5. This example shows an alternatives pattern construct in the head of the pattern. So this picks out elements where the argument is 2 and the head is either f or g. Another common pattern construct is a pattern like this one, which matches any expression with a head of real. For example, this uses that pattern to pick out list elements with a head of real. In the Wolfram language, expressions with a head of real are numbers with decimal points. The integers in that last example are real numbers, of course, but in the computer they have a head of integer, which can be picked out using the pattern _integer. Back on the subject of rules, Section 7 on assignments addressed the distinction between immediate and delayed assignments. And just as there are immediate and delayed assignments, there are also immediate and delayed rules. This input shows a delayed rule, which can be entered using a colon before the greater than character. This shows an application of that rule. The delayed rule is necessary here because the right side of this rule cannot be computed as intended until the value of the variable n is known, which doesn't happen until the rule is applied. You can find more information about patterns by selecting Wolfram Documentation under the Help menu to bring up the Documentation Center page, clicking on the Core Language and Structure button, and then selecting Rules and Patterns, which brings up this page with links to more information about rules, as well as this link to the page with more information about patterns, starting with the blank pattern and the entire range of pattern constructs in the Wolfram language.